how can we infuse strategy and processes into your marketing to drive repeatable and scalable growth?
Impressive stuff. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Hello, friends, whoever's watching, listening. Janet Mesh here of Aimtal. I'm here with Tucker Delaney-Winn, our growth marketing lead at Aimtal, and we are excited to just see what this becomes, honestly. Right, Tucker? I would say we are Aimtal's resident verbal processors of all things marketing. And I feel like our team was just, you know what? We're kind of annoyed listening to you guys just talk marketing all the time in the all hands. Say a lot of great stuff. Just get it on camera, start sharing it with the world. So one of my mantras for 2024 is be courageous. So I'm leaning into that this year, putting my face out there, sharing the wealth of knowledge that we have and share with our clients for hopefully a future marketing community. So we're excited. Anything you want to kind of set at some expectations, Tucker, or I can kind of just keep rolling. What do you want? How do you want to jump in?
You said verbal processing. We're gonna be verbally processing marketing trends. Hopefully, folks will be processing right there with you, and hopefully, this will be fun for you and me, Janet, and take the burden off others, on our team having to verbally process with us. So
truly talking shop. We're excited. Yeah. So I guess we could set some expectations. Yes. We are going to spend the next, we'll see how long this goes. But we are going to talk shop, deep dive, some industry updates, trends, research reports. But in particular, we'll share what's top of mind for some CMOs in 2024, according to a Gartner report that we downloaded, and we'll share a couple slides from that, which is exciting. And part of that is, I think, a big theme that we're seeing that I'm excited to talk about is just the importance of collaboration, not just within a marketing team, but also cross-functional collaboration and how you can, bring your team together and tools and systems and processes to really achieve that level of collaboration that's needed for success. In addition to that, we have some interesting reports and industry insights we can share for 2024. What the types of content and tactics are the most effective. And I think that people will be surprised. I was pretty surprised on a couple of reports that we found. And really dives into buyer intent, into interest and conversion. So we're gonna jump into all that shortly. But I guess to keep the intro going a little bit longer, Tucker, how about you start? Do you want to introduce yourself to the audience, share kind of who you are, what you do at Aimtal, and maybe a little bit of let's start there actually. Let's do it.
Cool. Yes, happy to. Thank you, Janet. Happy to be here. I'm Tucker Delaney-Winn, Aimtal's growth marketing lead, also a resident verbal processor for the team. Sometimes honored to be called Ads Dad by the team, as I am a new dad as well. On the growth marketing team at Aimtal, I've been here for 3+ years. And really what our focus is driving demand, leads, and revenue. What I love is that looks different every single time. That always makes it fun and unique and interesting. But I think kind of the core things that are always there, the questions that we're always asking is, how can we infuse strategy and processes into your marketing to drive repeatable and scalable growth? So those are always the things that I'm trying to think about. How can we get, what's the strategy and process to get things going and scaling? Personally, marketing story got started in New York City, Big Apple, doing marketing for Broadway shows, as you know. So really learned to make marketing theatrical, and now been back in Boston in the B2B tech scene. Haven't looked back since, but I think similar to you, Janet, started as a writer, found my way into demand gen, and now all things growth. Excited to talk about that. But what about you, Janet?
Very
I'm an
cool.
old bald man. Would love to hear about your story.
Agency life definitely does that to you. Either go bald or gray. So here we are. We're both rocking it.
Yeah.
Well, actually, before I talk about myself, Tucker's too humble, which is great. I think staying humble is important. However, gotta give a little shout out to Tucker of his career story. If you were obsessed with Hamilton at any point in your life, you can thank Tucker for writing the ad copy that convinced you to show up to the theater. So him and his team that worked on the Hamilton musical.
It
So
was mostly the ads that got people.
impressive stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they were everywhere. So amazing work. Yeah, I can jump in, share my story, a little bit of my background. So I'm Janet, CEO, co-founder of Aimtal. I started the business agency with my co-founder David in 2018. So we're going on 6 years as of today, this recording. So this year will be our 6th year in business, which is incredible. But my background, I luckily enough, like similar to you, Tucker, it sounds like I went to school for marketing and communication, and was lucky enough to start my career in marketing. I was, your classic marketing team of one at an IT staffing and consulting firm. Worked really close with their sales team, built out pretty much their whole digital marketing. They didn't have any digital marketing. And so from there, when they got acquired, actually, and similar, I think it was a marketing team of one, but I really liked was content writing, copywriting. I'm definitely a writer. That's where my roots are. And then going into digital marketing and kind of hit that inflection point when this company was acquired. I wanted to get like a range of skills, but I really like the tech industry and wanted to kind of go deeper there. And this is all the time of like kind of like the cloud revolution. That former company, they like literally help implement like large like legacy systems, like ERP systems, like SAP, PeopleSoft. So it was a really exciting time to be in the industry, as we know, and social media and just online marketing was actually becoming like taken as like a real important part of the whole strategy. But I realized 2 things: that I wanted to get a range of skills. So I started working with a couple different agencies over the years from there. But also, if you can believe it, like you couldn't work remotely. Like it just wasn't a thing. And I'm really passionate about traveling and wanted to just have that level of flexibility. Like my personality type is just like cannot sit like in a chair. I mean, I still do, to be honest, but at least it's the comforts of my home. But I just really couldn't believe that I got to this point in my like life where I felt like I was kind of, back at school, like gotta sit down at 8:30 in the morning and like ready to go until like 6 p.m. And you know, when you're younger, you can obviously you still hustling and you hustle, but I just didn't really understand why, if I was doing like online work, why I couldn't work fully remotely. And in that process of trying to find a company of that, I couldn't find it, honestly. And my co-founder David and I, we always wanted to like start a business together, especially a fully remote one. And so we couldn't find the company we wanted to work for, so we decided to create it. Honestly, that's really kind of where it came from. And a lot of my clients, when I was doing kind of as I was advancing my career, I also was doing a lot of like consulting on my own. And I just really loved working with like a range of companies, not just kind of working with one. So that's really the direction I went in. And kind of my first freelance clients became our first agency clients. So yeah, today I'm still, the marketing lead consulting across our clients, working with the team. And yeah, it's really exciting. We've done a lot with some really large enterprise organizations to help them build their strategies and execute upon it. So yeah, I guess, yeah. And just for context, Tucker and I work a lot together on like building those strategies, doing this research, working with our team, and then overseeing the execution. So we're talking about this stuff all day, every day, to the point where people, hopefully you're not even already tuning us out, because we're excited to share some of our insights.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Indulge me. Before we go into all the marketing, I'm curious, Tucker, like based on our career, what's a random or like surprising job you've had in your lifetime that you think people would be like, oh, wow, like interesting. Like, like what's your almost like one of your fun facts, I guess?
Yes, I think people are always thrown off by this, but prior to my marketing career, I had a quick stint in children's television. Worked at WGBH in Boston.
Oh,
Shout
classic out. Boston. Yes. Okay.
Yes. So worked on the show Arthur, Curious George, and then also Martha Speaks, about a dog who eats alphabet soup and can talk. Been trying to feed my dog Puck alphabet soup ever since. He hasn't spoken, but I'm thinking maybe one day soon. But yeah, no background in
That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really,
yeah, there you go. That's a cool little hybrid of your childhood development, education and marketing, and fascinating. Very cool.
Yeah. Well, what about you,
Amazing.
Jen? Yeah.
I would say actually, I think one of the most surprising ones is it wasn't like a full-time job. It was one of my jobs in college at university. But I was pretty much, I can't say I was an official librarian because you have to actually like get a degree in that. But I did work in the library, and I really enjoyed that. So I like to say I was could have been a librarian. I think that kind of
Yeah.
ties in nicely with, I do really like to do a lot of research and like deep dive stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna go with almost a librarian, kind of a librarian. I mean, you
I
learn
like
pretty much
that.
everything you got to do.
Yeah.
Dewey
I
Decimal
think I
System.
hope to be a librarian in maybe my golden years. So, 30
Yeah.
years down the road, I might, hit you up for a recommendation or some tips.
Honestly, the fact that you work in like client services, because it's being a librarian, like I think people have this misconception that you can just like read all day and not talk to anyone. It's probably
Right.
the opposite,
Yeah.
because it's like you're just having customer service the whole time.
Right.
But it worked for me. I was at the front desk, so they could have put me in the front.
Love it. Love it. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, cool. So let's, I guess we can start to dive into some of that research. We wanted to, I think where I would like to start is, I think everyone always wants to get inside the brain of the chief marketing officer, the CMO. It's kind of like that coveted person that you can, get as a client or as your customer or as your user. But as always, with a position of that level, I think they have a lot that they're responsible for.
Yes.
And I think this Gartner report that you found, Tucker, I think that this is really interesting because I would assume, I feel like when you think of a chief marketing officer, they're thinking of the actual marketing and like, the strategy and the execution upon that at like a global scale. Of course, that's a priority. However, what I was interested to see, and we can start to dive into this first, is the actually what was kind of the priority for them in this report, and what they were saying is around collaboration, and they're seeing a lot of inefficiencies in this. So we can pull up this pull up the screenshot here. Let's see.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So there's a lot on this. There's a lot on this slide here, but let's hear, I guess, from your perspective, if you want to kick it off. What were your top takeaways from like seeing this data and information, Tucker?
So I thought this was so interesting because I think, as you were just saying, Janet, CMOs, there's a lot they're responsible for. And I think, let's travel back to the past. Let's go back through history, and we think of like CMOs of the past kind of being in charge of that creative vision. We think of the Don Drapers of the world who had the big splashy creative ideas, and everybody in the boardroom is going, wow. And then I think about today, and you think about CMOs today, and I think there's an assumption that person has to be really focused on strategy and data, and how do we find signals from data and use data to kind of really drive our strategy and vision forward. I don't think either of those two things have gone away. I think they're still critical. But what I thought is so funny here is that we're seeing, okay, actually there's real issues with collaboration and processes. And so that CMOs, in addition to strategy and creative vision, they really need to be process leaders. And that was something that I hadn't thought about that much. I know we do a lot of that work at Aimtal, but process is not necessarily the most thrilling concept. It's not as engaging as a cool piece of creative. It's not as analytical, perhaps, as unique data strategies, but it's critical. I know we both know that, and so I think where it kind of left me is that those CMOs, I think, rather than they being the ones who have to always have incredible creative and strategy, what the report is kind of telling us is that they need to be the ones who can get their teams to function more efficiently and effectively, so that their teams can do that work, that creative, strategic work that really drives value. To me, that's really a mindset shift around CMOs needing to set the vision for processes just as much as they do for customer acquisition strategies. So yeah, kind of blew my mind a little bit, but it seems like there's real problems around collaboration, efficiency, just getting team alignment. But the great thing is that there's an opportunity for CMOs and marketing teams in general to step in and own those processes. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was kind of
I
my
also
thought.
like those like cross-functional, like I think this is also saying like the cross-functional collaboration is necessary, not just like within a marketing department, within an organization, but like how are they collaborating and working with the sales team?
Right,
If you
right,
even are, like how are you collaborating, communicating if you're, a product-based company with the product team, engineering,
right,
leadership.
right,
So I think yes, agreed. Like it is really interesting here, but I think this is the like that really foundational
right.
like work that I think a lot of people take for granted, honestly. And like you said, Tucker, we do a lot of this for our clients where we're coming in, auditing, understanding like, okay, what is kind of like your makeup of your marketing? Like, what do you have? What do you don't have?
Hmm.
And what type of process do we need to build or like system? Like we build a lot of processes and that ties into like the communication tools, the collaboration tools. Like I think also I've seen and experienced in working with enterprise organizations or even small companies, like whatever your size, I find that what we usually see is it's almost like treating it like kind of organically. It's like, well, we're human. We know how to communicate and collaborate. And
Right,
it's like, no,
right.
actually not. Like we all come from have different communication styles and
Yeah,
different backgrounds, different cultures, different languages.
yeah,
So creating that kind of like shared way of working together is really important. I don't think that like until we saw this, it's interesting how they're really attaching this to like this says harms revenue and profit outcomes. Like that's pretty
yeah,
intense, honestly.
yeah.
Like, it's a
Totally.
lot of pressure, but if you kind of put it in that context, like, okay, yeah, how can we like streamline, make things more efficient? Everyone has that kind of like shared understanding of how to work together. I'll go to the next. There was another report from a company called Kanto and the State of Digital Content of 2024 edition. And I
Mhm.
thought this was in it kind of reinforced what Gartner was saying with
Yeah,
CMOs. And the question was, what are the top challenges that your organization faces in creating, managing, and distributing content?
right,
And one of them, look at the third one, 42% are saying aligning teams for effective collaboration and or efficient workflows.
right.
Like this is a digital content report. And like there's like two things on here about content.
Yeah, it's not even about content. Yeah, it's about getting
It's
teams
like
to work.
all about the technology, the assets, like the resourcing, the collaboration, efficient workflows.
Mhm.
And I think that's actually a pretty exciting opportunity. Not that that's like a bad thing necessarily, but I think it's a very exciting opportunity
Yeah,
for someone in, not even just the CMOs, but anyone in the organization to
right,
be like, okay, if we focus on solving these problems first, then it's just gonna become that much more easy for us to like create the content that our audience and customers need, take that in our kind of philosophy at Aimtal is taking an integrated approach. It's like, how do you kind of, make sure that you're hitting across the channels where your audience are showing up, different types of formats, but not doing it where everyone's kind of focusing on a different kind of so like approach, I guess. Like they're not only just doing like their type of content and that's it, and it's in a silo. It's very much thinking of it as a collaborative effort. Like what are we creating? What are the campaigns? Thinking of it holistically, and then everyone aligned to that.
right. Absolutely. Well, and I think you hit on so many great things, Janet. And one of the things I want to go back to that you said is like, it's not just creating processes for marketing teams, but marketers and the CMO has an opportunity to create processes for other teams too,
Mhm.
for sales, for events, for operations. So I think a huge part of this report is, hey, guess what, CMOs? Guess what, marketing team? You can actually deliver value outside your own teams by helping drive business alignment across the entire organization and getting teams organized. And the
Mhm.
other piece, I think we were talking about ROI too. And I think on the one hand, marketing often seen as a cost center within an organization. Marketers are already trying to get out of that, hole. But then I think when we think about ROI, it's like, okay, how can I create a campaign that generates revenue, and then I can show that that's higher than the marketing cost, and therefore I'm driving ROI. But there's a flip side to that, and that's how can I save hours? How can I return hours back to business so that
Like
we're being
duplicate,
much more
like reduce like duplicative efforts,
duplicative
Yeah.
effort,
Yeah.
redundancy, and that's something that I don't think a lot of marketers think about as a value that they can add. But when you have a
Mhm.
processes, that's a huge way to generate ROI. Look at all the cost savings we had. And so
Right.
just another area where I think a lot of the work we do to help organizations tighten up their processes, be much more unified and streamlined, really helps save save hours and become much more efficient.
Yeah, I haven't answered this question. I'm curious, like, just to give a little bit of specifics on what we're talking about. Like, what would you say, like, some actual like processes or solutions that marketing teams can use to achieve this level of collaboration?
Absolutely. I think it's like, it does sound simple on the surface, but you'd be surprised. You go into organizations and they're using multiple tools. They're looking at their work on different platforms. And then suddenly you realize, oh, we're trying to collaborate on larger marketing goals, but we're working in different places. So, I mean, some of these things are pretty simple. Let's align the team on a shared calendar. Maybe that's a shared Trello board where we can easily, focus on the top priorities or top tasks. And then a knowledge hub too is huge. Where are we putting our knowledge that we've all agreed upon? Where are we documenting our processes? And is that all in the same platform so that we're all using single sources of truth? And I think I've always felt like it's kind of there's two sides to this. There's doing the process, but then there's educating and training the team on the process and ensuring that they actually follow it. And I think, I don't know about you, but I'd say we always kind of take that 1-2 punch approach of helping set up the processes, but then also helping train.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think if you're going to be, introducing or consolidating onto like one shared like technology or app or system, it's really important that I think, folks need to like learn themselves, but also like you need to train people, maybe show like, hey, these are like similar features that you were using. Right. But sometimes it's just a matter of like you gotta make those like pretty strong decisions. Like, this is what we're doing. This is how everyone needs to adopt the new process and tool so that we can achieve that level of collaboration. But it's also even then assessing, like, I think too is, are other teams using different tools and processes, and maybe like that education piece and be like, hey, look at what we're doing. Let's, try to get that buy-in internally. If you're working at such a large organization that, everyone's kind of, it ties into that shadow IT movement where, people have budgets and they have the authority to kind of purchase, apps and platforms, which is great, but not always thinking of how does that integrate with other teams and how can we collaborate. So I do also like the kind of like, sometimes I find it's really helpful to look at these things, not just necessarily on like a tool perspective, but also like doing an audit of like the people on the team is helpful. Like, so for example, you can do like, I feel like some like resources you can like tap into is like a DISC assessment. Like the DISC one is interesting. It scores and gives you like a report on each person's communication style, and it kind of like plots it out and explains like kind of how, and don't be surprised, everyone. Tucker and I are the same one in ID, right? Like, we're very similar, but then, there's other folks on our team that are kind of a different, maybe they're a C and S. It's really fascinating, I think, to like take that time to like understand your people as well and how everyone works. It's not like a perfect science or like a perfect mathematical equation, but I think having that empathy of like how everyone kind of communicates and like their collaboration preferences is an important thing to keep in mind of building out those processes. In, like you said, but I think at the core is like bringing everyone to that one source of truth. Don't overlook a calendar, people.
Don't overlook a calendar.
So simple. It's very, and then I mean,
suddenly we're all looking at one calendar together, and we're putting all the things that different teams and departments are doing on one calendar, and there's these kind of aha moments at large organizations.
Like, shout out to social media managers of the world, because you're like, hey guys, we have all this on our calendar. Look at how many posts we're sharing every day. Like, let's break it down back to the priorities. And I think that visibility, like that kind of visual angle of it, is really important.
Yep.
All right, cool. So there were some other things we wanted to kind of, you're talking about, CMOs need to be, drivers of change, Tucker. And I think, we're talking about, the process side and sharing some ideas around that, but I'd love to kind of talk through now, pivot a little bit to like, what type of content should these teams, they're like collaborating, they're communicating, they got it, like, what do they need to create? I'd love to kind of jump there next if you want to
Yeah.
share a little bit of what we saw there's a 2024 B2B content consumption and demand report
Yes.
that we want to kind of share some insights from next.
Absolutely. We've got our processes in place. People are collaborating perfectly. Okay, what kind of content are we creating that's actually going to move the needle on the B2B buyer journey? So yeah, glad you mentioned the B2B content consumption and demand report. Obviously, CMOs, marketers, they need to be drivers of change. And I think a lot of that, what we're seeing is that they need to be shaping larger organizational narratives. A lot of that's around ROI, but I think even outside of just ROI, it's customer value. What are the narratives? What are the stories that you're telling about how your product, how your organization is driving customer value? No surprise for you and me, Janet, but one of the best ways to do this from this report is through case studies. That is great news to us. I think it's really exciting, and it confirms a lot of what we've seen in our own performance data, right? Case studies are rich, in-depth ways to prove customer value, to legitimize the work you're doing in the eyes of your consumers. And frankly, from this report, they're just a super successful way. And what the report has found is that folks who are more likely to be associated with a buying decision are ones who have requested case studies. Just to get specific, believe it's users who request a case study were 78.5% more likely to make a purchase decision within 12 months. We talked to
Wow.
sales teams.
78.5% more likely.
Yeah,
Interesting.
down to the decimal. And I think sales teams are always trying to think about, okay, how do I increase lead velocity? How do I, speed up that pipeline? Here's a concrete asset that has been proven to really do that. And so I think there's really this clear connection here between a user's choice and format, and right here we're talking about case studies, and their readiness to buy. So would love to kind of flip it back to you, Janet, as to why we think that is. Why are case studies so successful in helping move that needle?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it's what you were talking about is like telling that story, right? It's not just like a case study, but it's like a customer story. It's like, this is how we helped, our customers achieve these goals that they had. And really, I mean, humans need stories. I think that's exactly
Right.
how we resonate and really put things, into context of our own goals and needs and experiences.
Yeah.
It's also just, I mean, it goes back to social proof, anyone will want, I mean, I always like connected it back to like, I love to go to restaurants, try new food. And it's like, what's the first thing I do? The first thing I do is like, okay, I'll look at the menu because I obviously want to like enjoy the food, but like look at the photos. But then the next thing I always do is like read the reviews. So I think a big part of that is like, you want that, it's the need for social proof and validation. It's like, okay, if this company, had success with, this, product or platform or service, then it sounds like, they can do that for me. So that validation, social proof goes a long way. And kind of, associating people to other people maybe they know or something similar to themselves. And if anything, also too, it kind of verifies and validates the success or the outcomes that your company, product, or platform could help your customer achieve. So I think it varies. Like, I kind of like to think of it as like this like empathetic way to like tell a story and put that person in the shoes of your customer, but also like I think it's a cool way to help almost like market your customers too, like giving them like a platform. I think that's sometimes like overlooked, but I really like that part of it too, where it's like kind of that co-marketing and amplifying the message is really important. And yeah, it was interesting because that report, they were saying how like really like people are seeking like tangible ways, to be able to like do these things. Like they want to, I think we all like to talk theoretically. We're even talking pretty theoretically, but like once you give those specific examples, it's like, oh, that's what you're talking. That's what you can do for me. That's how you do it. And I think that's a really helpful way to kind of for those case studies. The other part I'll say is, I think that, there's ways to use case studies in different parts of the journey. So I'm curious from you, Tucker, like, what are some ways you recommend that companies are using case studies? I guess to get into those examples, like, especially like the kind of, I mean, it's saying there, like, this is helping with, let's bring it back up real quick. Let's see here. more likely associated with a buying decision. So that is fascinating. I'm curious to hear like kind of your perspective on that and how to do that effectively to get that person, get a lead to that point.
So exactly what you just showed, right? So more case study, people who request it, people who engage, interact, more likely to be associated with a buying activity. And by the way, Aimtal has seen this time and time again with the clients we work with. When customers are engaging with case studies, we then see the deal velocity increase, and we just see a lot more of our marketing influence deals, have engagement with case studies. To your larger question, Janet, I think people vastly underestimate the power of case studies as part of your marketing engine. We know how important it is, and yet we often, we'll write up a case study, we'll put it on the website, and it's basically on some dusty shelf on a resource page in the back office of
I
your
clean my shelf, not totally dusty, but yeah.
No. Your
Yeah.
shelf would be very clean, but yeah, it's
True,
you're
though.
struggling.
Yeah, don't just create it just to create it.
No,
Just,
and I think that's what happens. I think maybe it comes out of like the product side. They're like, "Oh, get this case study," but we don't think of it as a
or
critical,
sales. Like I think it's right.
or sales as well. Yeah, and that's another place where I think it is used. At the bottom of the funnel, sales enablement. At the end of a sales meeting, oh, we've got this case study as a follow up. Great. Guess what? You should be using that on all stages of the funnel. I think the reality is that a case study is a super powerful asset that you can use not only at the bottom of the funnel, but also to attract, nurture, and convert leads. I think really case studies have to be both the impetus and the vehicle for integrated full funnel marketing campaigns. And that's not
You're
something
throwing out the big words today, Tucker.
the big words. I get passionate
I
about
love
case
it. Look
studies.
at this.
Um,
Let's go. Let's keep going.
I think
Yeah.
if
The
you
impetus and
have,
the vehicle for integrated campaigns, full funnel integrated campaigns. Wow.
is that what I said? That's good.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's absolutely spot on. I think, it's what you're saying is
Yeah.
instead of just creating the case study and then not kind of seeing, using it in different ways and kind of repackaging or repurposing.
Right. If you have
That's the point of it all, right?
exactly. If you have a person from a reputable company in a reputable title talking about a major pain point that other folks are experiencing and then how your product solved it, you should be screaming that from the rooftops. And if that doesn't work, you should be putting that in as many channels and tactics as possible. So, I mean, this,
Yeah.
Janet.
What are some like specific tactics you would recommend?
Yeah. So what is that integrated full funnel campaign? What's he actually talking about? What does that
Yeah.
look
What's that mouthful mean?
What's that message mean? So, we've got a pretty good, approach here where I think a great place to start is with a customer webinar. You get your customer on, you're starting, you might even learn things from your customer during that webinar that you didn't even know that your product did for
You're
them.
like really bringing the customer voice in. I like that.
You're literally bringing the customer voice in.
Yeah, like they're speaking live.
Let's have it. Let's talk about how our product or service helped you solve your largest, biggest pain points. Let's get into it. Sometimes you can even demo the platform so you're seeing it in action. From there, you've then got a live webinar. You convert that into an on-demand webinar. And then, and this is really key, you can translate that video recording into a downloadable, branded, designed PDF asset. Now, suddenly, we've got two different lead magnets. We've got an on-demand webinar, and we've got a downloadable case study that you can use and start sharing all across the funnel. Now, how do we share that? Up at the top, you've got lead campaigns, lead gen campaigns. So on LinkedIn, Google, Bing, you can start promoting these case studies as gated assets that then convert people. So we've got them in our CRM.
I find too, like, it's not just like being like, here's a case study. It's like pull out stats or like results and like make that the ad. It's not like download here, blah, blah, blah. It's like very much like really big, bold, like the exact like performance or like the story or the pain point even can work really well.
Yes. What does success with this kind of platform look like? Or how did known quantity company drive success with this platform? Huge ways. And then you test and learn too. Okay, what are the best ways to promote this case study to drive leads? And then of course, once folks are in your CRM, you've got a base of 70,000 contacts inside your CRM that aren't necessarily all being actively nurtured at the sales stages. fantastic thing to nurture with a case study as kind of that lead nurture asset, sending it to
Yep.
people, maybe breaking up the stats as well. And then, of course, keeping it on your website as well. Maybe there's a pop-up, maybe there's banners throughout your website. But really, what we're seeing is that when case studies are used as that vehicle for integrated marketing campaigns, when they're kind of placed in multiple channels, that's when people are engaging more with this high value asset. And that's, really helping accelerate pipeline velocity. So,
Well, I
yeah,
think this also comes back to that collaboration point is like, if you have your whole marketing team and even sales like aligned to this approach and this, integrated campaign across multiple channels, you're bringing all functions of the marketing and sales team to work together to like achieve a common goal that this is successful.
yes,
Then that comes back to it's like rally everyone together instead of everyone, we're just going to create all these things over here and we'll do the
right,
webinars over here and the ads over here and the emails over there. It's like everyone come together under one campaign and commit to that. Obviously, or if some folks, if maybe you're running similar campaigns or different campaigns targeted by audience,
right.
if you can only just do one, there's obviously like ways you can do more. But I think bringing everyone together of those same goals, results, outcomes of creating everything keeps it all very consistent and ensures that collaboration as well.
Yeah, I love that. People are always saying like, oh, how can we get marketing sales alignment? What if you have some projects where they're actually working together? You bring a sales
not just true handoff. It's like make it that perfect feedback loop.
Exactly. Yeah, that's such a great point.
Well, I guess to that point though, this is like I don't want to, I think marketing and the buyer journey is very complicated, especially the B2B buyer journey. So I think it's really easy, and as humans, we like to think of things in steps and like this very linear path that makes it a little bit easier for us to understand. However, I think it's very important for us to pivot, like to go a little bit further in this, Tucker, that it's not a linear path to conversion. And I think we're not saying like, do a case study, you're going to get all your customers. That's not it. Unfortunately, I think there's, I mean, maybe I think, there's, it will work, but also like there's a lot more you have to do. And this is another Gartner report. It's actually from 2022, but I think really it's kind of a little difficult maybe to read, but I think that's kind of the point. So this is a little overwhelming. So you can see they have a really interesting like B2B buyer journey of, identifying the problem, as you mentioned, they have the pain points, looking into solutions, like how do you find those solutions, customer stories, like different tactics. Requirements building is a lot around like, pretty much like gathering, like, what do we need as a solution? Like we did all this research. Now I got to go present the business case. And then going through like supplier selection and then analyzing that with different teams kind of comes back to that collaboration with other, IT, product, sales, leadership. But this slide here is fascinating because look at this flow chart. It is like all over the place. It's like, sure, you may have this like linear path, but like people, like these are people and like they are doing the research. Like they are like bopping around. They're not following this. It's like, I do X, then I'll do Y. It's like, I'm going to do X, then I'm going to go back to A, then I'm going to go to J, then I'm going to go to B. So it's definitely telling a pretty interesting story. And curious to kind of hear what your thoughts on here of like, how you kind of think about this and how you're thinking about the campaigns as well as, creating all this content, but it's not going to necessarily be this, linear process.
I love this graphic. I'm so glad you brought it up. I think it's honest and it's messy. And that's true because that's what it's like. As you said at the top, it's not this clean funnel where the lead becomes qualified and then it becomes a sales opportunity and then bing, bang, boom. Let's talk about a few things here. So first of all, the buyer journey, I think in the same report, that buying committee is often 6 to 10 decision makers. So it's not just one person going through this journey.
That makes sense.
Totally makes sense. You think you hop on these sales calls, all the different people, IT, finance, compliance. So all these different people are going through this process. They're all doing research and they're all doing it independently. So you might have different people at different stages of this path. And then, as you said, Janet, not only is this, not a simple process, it's not linear. People go backwards on this journey. They start top of funnel, they go down, a lead goes cold, or wait, I need to do, find out more things. And then I think the last kind of takeaway that I see is that the buying committee, the B2B buyers are doing research right up until that final sales close meeting. The notion that marketing is going to get leads and hand it off to sales and the
Yeah.
marketing's all done, and that,
Right.
and
Right.
then even from an audience perspective, that the B2B buyer is at a certain point just going to strictly get all their information only from a salesperson is just not true. They're going to be doing research through digital channels, and you can either let that happen organically and hope that they find the right things, or you can choose to exert control and influence over how that prospect is researching your product in the final stages of their sales journey. And I think that's the philosophy that we take,
Yeah.
is that that marketing sales handoff is dead. They need to operate in parallel, marketing and sales, so that
Right.
marketing is helping shape the research and the experience of the product and brand all the way up through that sales journey to close.
Yeah,
And
that
I
brings me to like one of my favorite pieces of research and these charts of data. What you're talking
yes.
about is like the average B2B buyers, it takes they're spending 3 to 4 months of research. Like, shout out to my fellow researchers. Like, we love to dig in. We want all the information. Like, and I think that's
Yes.
an important point. It's like folks they want to educate themselves, they want to learn, they want to be able to show up to these sales calls, like knowing what they're talking about, being very clear, and they kind of just want to jump right into it. They don't want to kind of get this like fluffy demo when they can just watch a video on YouTube about your company, right? They want to be like, okay, when I show up to the sales call, I want you to like tell me like how this is going to solve for me and my company. And it goes back to the case studies, prove that
Right.
you've already done it for these companies.
Right.
The other thing that's super fascinating, which you touched on, is like the communication channels that makes folks aware. The B2B tech buyer, this is a B2B tech buyer
Yes.
report, is
Right.
brand social media. I think that's pretty shocking. And I don't think people think of brand social media channels as a place for folks to learn about a product platform. We didn't see
Yes.
it necessarily, maybe it's helping to drive that awareness. I would just like to confirm. But it's what you were saying back to the Gartner report, is like they're bopping around the buyer journey.
Around.
Bopping
They're
around.
bopping
Like,
around.
it's not linear. Like, it's not like I go to social and then I keep going down. It's like they may go back on the, like, for example, you go on a sales call, do the whole pitch. What do they might do? They might go back on a LinkedIn and look up your CEO, be like, is this legitimate? What are they saying? Do they have a
Yes.
similar like philosophy approach to me? Go listen
Yes.
to a podcast.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think, it kind of back to that restaurant analogy I was sharing before. It's like checking the reviews, but then you're also like, what is it? I want to go see like their Instagram, like maybe like I want to check out like the vibe here. Like, is this like, something I want to like buy into? You're spending money like at the end of the day. So it's like you want to make sure you're making the right decision and not kind of having to leave a poor review afterward.
Totally agree. I feel like folks used to say that your website is the front door of your company. I would almost argue now that social media is the front door, or maybe
Yeah,
you've got two
the
front
website's
doors.
the house. Let's just put that on record. Like,
Maybe people
yeah,
social first. So to that point, like
right.
as you just said, critical sales prospects may be coming to your social media. If you're posting about, National Lobster Day or whatever, and not thinking about what are the core value propositions, what are the key pain points that our product is solving, and making sure that's front and center
Mhm.
on your social media channels, you might be in trouble. So people
I mean,
have
I
to.
gotta argue, Tucker. I am from Boston, and if there's National Lobster Day, if there's a strong argument, yeah, pitch to me, I'm probably gonna show up.
If you could optimize my processes so that I could better consume more lobster, I suppose I'd be very game. So fair play to you. That's why you're the
But like you're
CEO.
saying, you gotta show up in many channels. Like, it's not just like using
Yeah.
one or different, it's, and not to like do too much either. I don't think that's the point we're trying to make. It's just like comes back to like folks want to do research. Like, the buyer wants to educate themselves, so make it easy for them.
Yeah, recognize the value of dark social and the fact that folks are going to be coming to your social channels to do serious sales research, and that you want to lead with
Yes.
your best foot forward there, and
Oh,
not
that's
an
yeah, that
afterthought.
might be a good topic for the next video potentially, because of dark social and all that. SparkToro came out with some research that I feel like we got to dig into soon,
Absolutely.
because
Yeah.
that is a whole other area of a whole part of this pie for sure.
Oh yeah.
All right, so I guess final couple final questions. Curious, just kind of round us out on this is, I guess just to give in the context of, giving those clear examples, like how should marketing and sales teams approach this? I have some ideas, but I'm curious, like, I think a question we get a lot too, Tucker, is like, okay, how do we shorten the sales cycle for, a lead to become a customer? I think that's always the number one question. It's definitely not, some silver solution. It's not like a very clear answer, but
Right.
there are some things I think that folks can kind of take away and start to try
Right.
and do. So curious to hear what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to when we were talking about processes, and these things aren't necessarily complex, but they have to happen. So for me, if we're talking marketing and sales, my question back to the folks we work with is like, well, how are your marketing and sales teams meeting right now? What's that cadence? What's that frequency look like? And what are you talking about? Are you opening up your CRM and looking at pipeline together every week? Are you talking about the leads that are coming in? So I think we always like to start with, how are your marketing and sales teams functioning right now? And then we can come in and help advise, like, hey, let's start meeting weekly and starting talking about looking at deals, leads, customers, and starting to understand where the what's working, what's not, and what we can do differently. I think it's next to impossible for a marketing team to accelerate lead velocity if they're not regularly talking to sales.
Mm-hmm.
Not gonna happen because they don't know, what are those sales conversations like with the leads that we've brought in. So, but as we've done many times at Aimtal, having a 15-minute meeting with sales every week to talk about, hey, what are you hearing from the contacts you're meeting with? How are those leads that we brought in for you? What's working? What sucks? What can we improve? That meeting can be transformational. So I think that's kind of the first
Also,
piece.
like getting like those like messaging snippets like live from like, oh yeah, they said like blah blah blah, and then you could like put that into your next email and like test out the subject line. That's what's cool about like on the marketing side. It's like you get those data points, so you can immediately see like, hey, this is starting to resonate. Like let's like go a little bit further and seeing if we can like do more with this message to this audience. It's like an immediate experiment, really. But
I think
if it worked on a sales call, it could work back at the top of the funnel.
Absolutely. I think people are thinking about like signals, like what's the signal? Where are we getting signal? How about the signal that's happening in sales meetings? And if you listen to what is being told to them, like you said, slapping that across the front of a LinkedIn ad or an email, we've seen that work and be a game changer. So, totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right. Well, I'm gonna kind of wrap this up a little bit, but Tucker, always a pleasure talking with you of all things. I think we keep going, honestly.
I think you're good.
We really will just keep going if I don't shut us down soon. But for everyone who's listened this far, watching us talk shop, thank you. Thanks so much for hearing us out, and would love for you to join the conversation too when you listen to this, view this. Let us know what you're seeing. Like, I think that's all, pulling those stories together, pulling that research together, sharing these examples, what's working, what's not. That's how we all become pretty much like better at what we do, is by sharing that knowledge and not kind of gatekeeping. And I think that's a little bit of our point here, is that we want to share this knowledge a little bit more broadly and wider, and things that people can kind of just take away, I think. So I guess the last question I'll ask on that theme, Tucker, is like, what's the call to action? Like, what's one thing you would recommend marketing teams and even CMOs, I guess, like focus on in 2024? I think there's obviously like a lot of answers to that question, but I think kind of in the research we shared today, what's one thing you would like people to maybe like start trying in the next, months, quarter, year?
Yeah, I'm gonna go kind of, I'm inspired based off our conversation. Consider trying a customer marketing campaign using a case study as your primary lead magnet. I think that's, discover what might happen if you do that. Give it a shot. Same question back to you, Janet. What about you?
All right. I think I'm going to go against what I was thinking of saying, when I was going to be like, you got to create a strategy and really like that campaign strategy. But I think it's back to the beginning of what we were talking about as well. And it's really like, honestly, do an audit of your collaboration, your processes. What processes do you have? What don't you have? What tools and systems is everyone in your marketing team using? What are other departments using? And I think that's a really strong place to start, because you can't kind of achieve that level of growth and scale that organizations are looking for if you don't have that strong foundation. So I think really taking the time, like, it's something you always push off, but really taking the time to like critically look at, like, is this really working for us in terms of our systems and apps and processes, and look for those ways to improve efficiency and collaboration is what I'm going to go with for that one, to answer that question. So let us know what you find.
Yes,
let us know what the results are. Awesome. Well, thanks, Tucker, again for joining, and everyone joining us, listening in. Of course, just a friendly reminder, we're from Aimtal. We're an integrated marketing agency. We create a ton of our own content, so we're excited to start doing some video. But we also have other video content on our YouTube channel, on our website. Specifically, we have a little mini series that we run called Marketing in a Minute. So if you don't want to listen to us for like 45 minutes, you can get these like 1 minute quick hit tips and ideas of kind of executing some of these ideas in your own organization. So you can sign up for our newsletter on our website, Marketing in a Minute, check out those videos. And yeah, we're excited to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Janet. Thanks, everyone.